I'm so honored and privileged to have Kvod Harav Elie Abadie on the show. As Senior Rabbi of the Emirates, your role in building bridges between Jews and the Arab world is not only historic, but it almost seems miraculous. Can you talk about the significance of the Abraham Accords, the past and present relationship between Judaism and Islam, and your hopes and dreams for the future?
Thank you, Ben, very much. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here with you in this podcast, and I hope I could contribute whatever I can to this. So let's start with your first question. As you know, the relationship between Islam and Judaism really dates back from the advent of Islam and even before. For those people who are very knowledgeable in Judaism and in Islam, we will recognize that there are so many precepts that are very, very similar. Some of them are exactly identical. Some others are similar with some changes. First and foremost, the belief in one God, in one unique God. It's exactly the same between Judaism and Islam. We both believe in a monotheistic God, and a God that is untouchable, a God that is cannot be seen, omniscient, omnipotent, and transcendental. So that is a core of the belief of Islam, and it's the core of the belief in Judaism, as you know. So that in history has made Judaism and Islam, in a sense, be good neighbors. And there was a time in history, as you know, that sages of the Jewish people and sages of the Muslims exchanged ideas in a very open way, and they agreed and they disagreed in certain things. And so it was a very open channel of communications between them, discussing the philosophical basis of the religion, their precepts, and their laws. Interesting to know that they called halakha sharia. Halakha comes from the word lalechet, to go, right? To go. Sharia comes from the word shari'. Shari' in Arabic means a street, a road, a path. And so it's basically the same. That's what they're trying to say. The path that we go, the halakha that we go, it's the same thing. In fact, Rabbi Saadia Gaon, in his translation of the Torah, on his translation of the Ten Commandments, and in his tafsir, which is the Arabic translation and interpretation of the Torah and of the Tanakh, actually, he uses the word sharia for the word halakha. And in fact, he used the word sharia sometimes for the word of the Torah. And so that is very, very similar. I could sit here for days doing a comparative study between, or comparative lecture between Islamic law and Jewish law, and you'll see that there are a lot of misvot, principles, philosophic principles that are very, very similar, if not identical, between the two religions. Of course, we have had also times in history in which the radicals amongst the Muslims forced conversion of Jews and of non-Jews, basically under penalty of death if they don't convert to Judaism. So those times, unfortunately, we have had them in history, as we have had good times also. So having now lived in the country for over 9 months in the United Arab Emirates, really right after the signing of the Abraham Accords, I feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me in such a moment and such a place that I consider to be a very historic moment. It's a moment in which I believe and I hope that we are going to rejuvenate, create those good days, those good centuries in which Jews and Arabs, or Jews and Muslims, were able to communicate openly. They exchanged ideas, they worked together, they respected each other. And so I believe and I hope that indeed we are starting this period of time. And so it's a historic moment. It's a moment that has already started to change that whole region approach to Jews and to Israel as a nation. If I could just compare the accords with the other peace treaties that Israel has with Egypt and Jordan, really the difference, as the proverbial say, between heaven and earth. In less than 1 year, in fact, we are celebrating the Accords, not signing, the Accords announcement a year. This weekend is actually a year from that time, and then the signing will be in September. But the amount of change that occurred in society in the Emirates and in Bahrain, and of course in Israel, is something amazing to see. The business accords, the academic accords, the MOU signs between so many companies, even social or NGOs and organizations have met each other, have exchanged ideas. We have had so many conventions in Dubai, from scientific, from security, from medical to business to academic, that took place within less than a year. Wow. And the amount of tourism, Israeli tourists coming to the Dubai, to the UAE, over 120,000 over this period, if not more. And of course, Emiratis and Bahrainis have gone to Israel also to visit. They have had so many exchanges of ideas and lectures and science and everything. So that has not occurred in 40 years of peace with Egypt, and in now almost 30 years, 27 years with the peace with Jordan.
So what suddenly clicked? Like, why did they just decide now is the time?
First, as the foreign minister of the UAE said at the beginning, this is not a peace treaty. We are not calling it a peace treaty because we were never at war with Israel. He says this is called a normalization process, normalization accord, because we are normalizing. It is normal to have relations with a neighboring country. And Israel, being at the neighboring country, is in the region. It's normal to have relations with them. Now, do I agree with everything that Israel does? He said no. But do we agree with everything any other country does? Also not. So, but we still have relations with them. So there is no difference here. And he said, wherever we disagree, we let them know that we disagree, as we let other countries know. So why should there be any difference between that and any other country? So that, I think, that is the ikar, that is the essence, I think, of the relationship, that is not seen as a peace treaty, because they were never at war. We were not ever at war. We agree and we disagree in certain things, but we could have relations, so it would benefit all the countries. Now, why is it that now and not before? Look, there is no country in the world that does things against their interest, maybe except Israel. Sometimes it does things against their own self-interest. But every country in the world, what they do for the interest of the country. But that's normal and that's expected. You don't expect any country, as any individual, to do things against their own interest. So it is in the interest of the UAE, of course, but it's in the interest of Israel to sign it also, of course. So first and foremost, we have to start from that point of reference. It is in the interest of both countries to have this normalization accord, to have diplomatic relations and all other relations that between countries they have. Number two, what are those interests? They have similar interests. They both are into science, technology, cyber. The UAE may need some know-how in agriculture, which Israel has, and vice versa. Both countries need each other because they both can help each other tremendously. And so those are the common interests that Israel and the UAE, and I would say the entire Gulf region has. Then are there issues of security in the region that they both have interest? Of course, they have issues of security that they have to thwart. Do they have some common enemies? I would say yes. And so those things have united them, yes, but those are just one of the many things that I see both countries, or even Israel and the Gulf region, including Bahrain in this case, they have a lot in common. And so why, when all those countries living in the same region, facing the same challenges, that they can help each other, why shouldn't they hold hands, so to speak, and help each other? And I think that's what the Abraham Accords. Now, I knew that they were coming for several years. The relations between Israel and the UAE has been happening for over 10 to 15 years. They have had cultural exchanges, scientific exchanges, strategic exchanges, all were in a under the table, so to speak, fashion, not to rock the boat, if I could use that proverb, in that region. But I think with the encouragement of the Trump administration, incentives and the realization that what are we doing? You know, we both have similar interests. We both want to live in peace and tranquility. We both want to help each other. Why don't we just do it and be, you know, be out there and say, yes, we want to join each other. We want to have diplomatic relations. We want to sign that accords, and that's what happened. And I believe that several other countries in the region will do the same thing. Well, we saw after the UAE, we had Bahrain, then we had Sudan, then we had Morocco, and I believe few others will be coming in its right time.
Right. Well, it's really exciting and it's beautiful. I'm so happy that it's happening. It feels like a utopian dream coming to fruition.